The first time I noticed it, I was brushing my teeth. It was a mundane Tuesday, the kind of day that usually bleeds into the next without leaving a mark. I looked into the vanity mirror of my new home, a sprawling, ivy-covered manor in the outskirts of Oakhaven, and I saw myself, Julian Vance. 32, sharp jawline, eyes a bit tired from the move, but generally a man in control. I spat into the sink, wiped my mouth and turned away, but my reflection didn't. For a fraction of a second, a heartbeat's worth of time, I felt a lag. As I turned my head toward the door, I caught the image of myself still staring straight ahead in the glass. It was only when I froze, my heart skipping a beat, that the reflection snapped back into place, mimicking my wide-eyed shock. I laughed it off. Moving stress, I told myself. Lack of sleep. The mind is a treacherous thing when it's tired. I had bought the Oakhaven estate because I needed the silence. As a freelance architect, my life was built on lines, angles, and precision. The house was a masterpiece of the late 19th century, filled with dark mahogany and, strangely, an abundance of mirrors. They were everywhere, in the hallways, built into the wardrobe doors, even small decorative ones in the kitchen. The previous owner, a reclusive socialite named Evelyn Thorne, must have been incredibly vain, or incredibly afraid of what was behind her. By the third night, the lag became a deviation. I was shaving, the blade humming against my skin. I tilted my head to the left to get the line of my sideburn. In the mirror, the Julian looking back at me tilted his head to the right. I stopped. The razor dropped into the porcelain sink with a clatter that sounded like a gunshot in the silent house. My reflection stayed tilted to the right. It was looking at me with an expression I never make. A slight, mocking smirk. His eyes weren't just reflections of mine. They were deeper, darker, like wells filled with ink. "Stop it," I whispered. My voice felt thin, easily swallowed by the heavy curtains and thick rugs of the room. The reflection's mouth didn't move, but the smirk widened. Then, with a fluid, sickening motion, it straightened its head and synced back up with me. I backed out of the bathroom, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I didn't use that bathroom for the rest of the night. I slept with the lights on, but even then, the polished surface of the brass lamp on my nightstand seemed to watch me. The next morning, I decided to cover the mirrors. I took old bedsheets and duct tape, moving through the house like a man possessed. Hallway mirror covered. Bedroom vanity covered. Even the small ones in the foyer. But there was one I couldn't reach. In the grand ballroom, a room I rarely used, there was a floor-to-ceiling mirror framed in heavy, tarnished silver. It was bolted to the wall, and the glass seemed to ripple like water whenever I approached. I stood before it, sheet in hand. As I raised my arms to drape the cloth, I saw him again. My reflection. But he wasn't holding a sheet. He was standing with his arms crossed, watching me with a look of intense curiosity. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice cracking. This time, the reflection moved its lips. No sound came out, but I could read them perfectly. "I am the you that you hide." I threw the sheet over the glass and ran. I locked myself in my study, the only room without a single reflective surface. I spent the day staring at blueprints, but the lines didn't make sense anymore. Every time I looked at a window, I saw the darkness outside, and I knew that if I looked too closely at the glass, I wouldn't see Julian Vance. I would see the thing in the mirror. Retention loop. You think you know your own face. You see it every day. But have you ever really looked? Have you ever wondered if that person in the glass is just a puppet, or if you are the one on the strings? That night, the sounds started. A rhythmic tapping. Ting, ting, ting. Like a fingernail hitting glass. It was coming from the hallway, then the ballroom, then the bathroom. It followed a pattern, a slow, deliberate march around the house. I sat in my chair, clutching a letter opener, my eyes darting to the gap under the study door. Then I saw the shadow. It wasn't a shadow cast by light. It was a silver-gray silhouette that slid across the floor, independent of any object. Stopped at my door. The handle turned. Slowly, deliberately. I had locked it, but the lock clicked open from the outside as if a key had been turned in a mirror image lock. The door creaked open. There was no one there, just the empty hallway. But as I looked at the polished hardwood floor, I saw my reflection walking toward me on the surface of the wood, even though I was sitting perfectly still. I realized then that the mirrors weren't just glass. They were portals or perhaps cages, and the locks were failing. I spent the next week in a state of waking sleep. I couldn't leave the house. Every time I reached for the front door handle, I saw my reflection in the brass plate reaching for it too, but with a grip so violent it seemed ready to snap my wrist. I was a prisoner of my own image. I began to research the history of the house and Evelyn Thorne. I found old newspaper clippings in the attic, tucked away in a trunk. Evelyn hadn't been vain. She had been a scholar of the shattered path, an ancient belief that every soul has a twin in the silver world, a speculum. The speculum is everything you are not. Your darkness, your repressed desires, your hidden malice. Usually, the glass keeps them separate. But if the glass is old enough, or if the person on this side becomes too fractured, the speculum can cross over. Evelyn hadn't died of old age. She had disappeared. The police report stated the house was found in perfect order, except for one thing. Every mirror in the house had been smashed, save for the large one in the ballroom. I went back to the ballroom. I had to know. I ripped the sheet off the silver-framed mirror. The Julian in the glass was different now. He was wearing my clothes, but they looked better on him. His skin was flawless, his eyes bright. He looked like the version of myself I always dreamed of being, the perfect architect, the confident man, the hero of my own story. "What do you want?" I screamed at the glass. The reflection stepped closer, his face pressing against the surface of the glass until his nose flattened slightly, as if the barrier were made of soft plastic rather than hard silica. "I want the air," he whispered. This time I heard it. It was a hollow, echoing sound, like a voice coming from the bottom of a well. "I want the sun. I want to feel the weight of a heartbeat instead of the cold pulse of the silver." "You can't have it," I said, backing away. "I already do," he replied. He raised his hand and pressed it against the glass. On my side, I felt a sudden, freezing pressure on my own palm, even though I was 5 feet away. My hand was being drawn toward the mirror by an invisible force. I fought it, digging my heels into the rug, but the reflection was stronger. He was pulling me in. "Let go," I howled. "Why?" he asked, his voice becoming clearer, more resonant. "You hate your life, Julian. You hide in your blueprints. You fear the world. I will live it for you. I will build the cathedrals you only dream of. I will love the people you are too afraid to touch. I am the better Julian." My hand touched the glass. It wasn't cold. It was searing hot. I felt my fingers pass through the surface. The sensation was horrific, like sticking my hand into a hive of bees. The glass rippled around my wrist, clinging to my skin like liquid mercury. I looked at my arm. Where it entered the mirror, it turned silver. I could see the bones and veins through the translucent, metallic skin. I was being converted. With a final, desperate surge of strength, I grabbed a heavy bronze bust of a philosopher from a nearby pedestal and swung it at the mirror. Crack. The glass didn't shatter. It spiderwebbed, a single hairline fracture running from the point of impact down to the floor. The reflection screamed. A sound of pure, crystalline agony. The pressure on my hand vanished, and I fell back, gasping for air. But I had made a mistake. By cracking the mirror, I hadn't weakened him. I had given him a crack to crawl through. Retention loop. They say breaking a mirror brings 7 years of bad luck. But they don't tell you why. It's because a broken mirror is a broken cage. And once the cage is open, the thing inside doesn't care about luck. It only cares about escape. Over the next few hours, the house began to change. The angles of the rooms felt wrong. The hallway seemed to stretch for miles. I tried to find the kitchen, but I ended up in the attic. I tried to go downstairs, and I found myself in the basement. The house was becoming a labyrinth of reflections. I started seeing him in every surface. A glimpse of silver skin in the chrome of the toaster. A mocking eye in the window pane. He was moving through the house like a shark in water, using the reflective surfaces as a transit system. I realized I couldn't hide. I had to finish it. I took a sledgehammer from the basement. I was going to smash every single mirror in the Oakhaven estate. I started with the bathroom. Smash! The glass fell in jagged shards. In each shard, I saw a tiny version of the reflection, still smirking. I smashed the shards into dust. I moved to the hallway. Smash! 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 I was covered in sweat and silver dust. My lungs burned, but I felt a sense of triumph. I was winning. I was reclaiming my world. Finally, I reached the ballroom. The grand mirror was still there, the crack I had made glowing with a faint, eerie light. The reflection was standing right at the edge of the crack. He looked haggard now, his silver skin peeling like old paint. He looked desperate. "Stop," he hissed. "If you break this, you break yourself." "I'd rather be broken than replaced," I said, raising the sledgehammer. "You don't understand," he said, and for the first time, there was fear in his eyes. "We are two halves of a whole. If I die, you become a ghost, a memory without a shape." "I'll take my chances," I growled. I swung the hammer with everything I had. The impact was deafening. The silver frame groaned, and the glass exploded. Silence. The ballroom was filled with a thick, shimmering fog of glass dust. I stood there, the hammer heavy in my hands, breathing in the metallic air. I had done it. The mirror was gone. Only the empty, dark wood of the wall remained behind the frame. I felt a strange lightness. My aches were gone. My fear had vanished. I felt perfect. I walked out of the ballroom and through the house. I felt more confident than I ever had. I went to the front door and opened it. The sun was rising over the Oakhaven hills, and the light felt glorious on my skin. I stepped out onto the porch, ready to start my new life. I walked down to the small pond at the edge of the property. I wanted to see my face. I wanted to see the face of the man who had defeated his own shadow. I knelt by the water's edge and looked down. The water was still, perfectly clear. I looked at the surface, but I didn't see Julian Vance. I didn't see a face at all. There was just a hole in the world, a human-shaped void of nothingness where my reflection should be. I reached out to touch the water, and my hand didn't create ripples. It passed through the surface as if the water weren't there. I felt nothing. No cold. No wetness. I looked at my hands. They were turning silver. Not the translucent silver of the reflection, but a dull, matte gray. I looked back at the house. In the upstairs window, a man was standing. He was wearing my clothes. He was holding a cup of coffee, looking out at the sunrise with a satisfied smile. He saw me, the gray, fading thing by the pond, and he raised his cup in a silent toast. Then he turned away and closed the curtains. I realized then what had happened in the moment the mirror shattered. We hadn't fought for the right to exist. We had fought for the right to be the one outside. When the glass exploded, the two worlds swapped. I didn't break his cage. I broke mine. I am now the reflection. I am the one trapped in the silver void, looking out through the cracks of the world. Every time a child looks into a darkened window, they see a glimpse of my gray, reaching hands. Every time you catch a movement in the corner of your eye while looking in the mirror, that's me, screaming for a way back. But there is no way back. The Julian Vance in the house is building his cathedrals. He is loving the people I was too afraid to touch. He is living the life I wasted. And the worst part? The absolute horror that keeps me screaming in the silence? I'm starting to forget what I originally looked like. My face is blurring, stretching, becoming a blank slate of silver. Tonight, I saw you. You were brushing your teeth, looking a bit tired, a bit distracted. You didn't notice me at first, but I'm getting better at mimicking your movements. I'm learning your rhythm. Go ahead. Spat into the sink. Wipe your mouth. Turn away. I'll stay right here. And next time, maybe I'll be the one who turns first.